Well, I guess we'll get started to respectful of everybody's time. Welcome. I'm not sure I'm being official right now, but acting chair, we apparently did not have the quorum that we thought we did last time, so let's move on that one, I guess. Unless you want to take your turn.
Well, we don't have quorum now, so
Yeah.
we can make it official
Do we?
if we have another person attend, right?
One
So
more.
we need
There's
eight.
one more coming.
There is, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll make it all official then, yeah.
Alright.
I'll happily lay the reins over.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the things later when we talk a little bit about the bylaws, getting some of the time done stuff revisited. Conflict of interest forms, everybody was asked to submit and, make sure that you sign those. And then, we might brought something else up about the forms and what happens to them. So do you want to, I can tee that up a little. They have to go somewhere and they do, they go to staff, but we have to do something with them so that we're aware of the conflicts. And I think we handle that through the assignment of the applications, but we don't necessarily say them anywhere. So you want to share what your thoughts were on how that
Sure.
just
The
formalize that?
conflict policy literally says in black and white that the members have to vote on the conflicts. Either to find that there is a conflict, but there's a solution to it, or there's a conflict and there's no solution to it and something else has to be done, or that there's no conflict, which is possible. I mean, if people are disclosing more than actually constitutes a conflict, it's perfectly fine for the body to conclude that it's not a conflict. And so what Pat was just referencing was that in past practice, what you've done is you've made sure as soon as you got the disclosures that the application assignments wouldn't go to anyone for an organization that that person has a conflict with. And that's fine, and that's a good solution. But the bylaws require the policy requires the additional step of a member vote. It's kind of that simple. And that's actually the common practice in the nonprofit community conflict policies as well. Well, it should be. I have to say, I see most nonprofits, even sophisticated nonprofits, don't even know that either, but that is how it works in the nonprofit world too.
Yeah, and to add to that, so basically when all the conflict of interest forms are submitted, we can put together some sort of form that has everyone listed with their potential conflicts. And then additionally to that, we've tried not to give reviewers the same review 2 years in a row. So it's just a little bit of an added conflict of interest, so to speak. So we can, submit that back to the board, potentially have another meeting before the reviews go out, where that can be voted on.
And I think our next meeting is, at least as it's scheduled right now, is to review the application and get some training. So we might even be able to do it at the beginning.
Yeah, the reviews technically are supposed to go out before that meeting.
Okay. Okay.
But we could possibly wait and have the reviews go out that meeting, so that we can review the conflict of interest and make sure everything's confirmed.
Yeah. Although if someone else doesn't show up, we're going to need
I know.
need a meeting just to be able to move things along. Okay. Okay, so that's just a little extra added, I guess, covering ourselves to make sure that we are compliant, but we need to put that in the notes and stuff. Okay.
Can I ask you a question about the conflict of interest? Since I don't know, but it's a financial interest in the organization.
No,
Yeah.
well, it is, but it's more than that. It's any circumstance that could call into doubt the ability of the person to act with, I think the word is total objectivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So sitting on a board of a grantee, even though it's not a financial interest, could be a circumstance that calls into doubt whether you ought to be the one reviewing the application of that potential grantee.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I always think of what would it look like in a headline.
Right.
For the worst case, and we just don't want it, I think we've been good about it, so we just need to at least document that appropriately. And then the issue of video conferencing, you had that in your packet. It was intended, the piece that we have was intended to allow members to attend the meetings by video conference. But there's a but on that, there has to be a quorum in the room. So at this point, between that issue and then Mike pointed out that the laws as they are right now expire in July, right? And so we don't know what that's gonna look like. I think it was rolled over this, it looks like every 2 years. I did a little more homework after you mentioned that. And,
Yeah, I mean, originally it expired in 2024, but it obviously got renewed to 2026.
So I don't think that's gonna help us right now. And it might even make it a little easier to consider, stay home if you, so if, does anybody have any other thoughts on that, right, as far as meeting this type of,
I do have a question.
okay.
So, I've attended video meetings in many other organizations.
Yeah.
Why does there need to be a resolution to have one here?
State law.
State law, yeah. That
I've
govern-
attended other meetings with people who are state entities and they have video conferences.
Then maybe they had previously adopted a resolution authorizing the video conferences.
Mhm.
The resolution is to authorize it, and then it's a standing authority. You don't have to reauthorize it every single time.
Mhm.
And with that, I'll just add, so they might not be voting on items.
Yes, we do.
They do. I
But
can't speak to
I
other.
think you answered the question.
Yeah, okay,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, the quorum is the real issue for us, I think. And the voting, as far as you can vote, but another board I sit on was told we couldn't vote if we were on
Yeah,
that, so I have to dig into
It
that
doesn't
one
make
separately.
sense.
No, but
But I'm not an expert on that, so
yeah, I have
Don't
to
hold me.
double check that one. But here we need 8 people here anyway to make that work. So any other thoughts on that? Just let it go for now. Okay, so we're gonna let that one go and
Yeah, so really, we don't need to do anything with the resolution. Post July, if there's anything that replaces that, we can take a look at it again.
yeah, and I think we should know in April maybe. Is that the timing of when the law comes up? It looked like the vote or the proposal.
well, maybe there's a bill pending somewhere in the legislature to extend it.
Do you have
Oh, no, I was just, moving here.
So next on the list is the vice chair nominations. Again, the timing in the bylaws, we'll look at that later, but we did have one individual that is interested in the role. Because we need to publicize that we are electing, I think that was what you suggested, we can't do that today, but Mike is willing to take on that vice chair role for the future, so next meeting, we can hopefully make that official. And we didn't have anybody else step forward. You're also a second year in your term, so you have a potential for the time to take up the chair role too, because that would be something I think we might want to look at again in the bylaws, if that makes sense that a vice chair becomes the chair, but it's not necessarily, we can look at that, so that's the intent. Okay, any other questions on that? I think it went out a couple times, so to everyone, that opportunity. Okay, you wanted, sure, go back to the application form.
Yes. So we have a couple changes from those of us who performed reviews last year to the new funding cycle in 2027. The two major changes, aside from changing the years and things like that, are removing the feedback section. We previously had funding acknowledgement and feedback, so the organizations would comment on the feedback that they've received from the board or from our department, and how they've incorporated that feedback into their practices. The organizations have not received feedback letters from the board or from our department, so we removed that as a piece of the application. So that's the first major change. Are there any questions or comments on that?
I think one of the other things we tied into there was if they had an audit from the comptroller's office and they had some feedback there, I think we kind of looped that in there.
Yeah,
Should we?
So that will be the second major change. So the second is if they were subject to an audit from the Erie County Comptroller's office, that they recognize that, but then also address, how have they responded to, that audit, and they can provide a narrative there so they can give us some information during our reviews. Which, if you are unsure if your organization has received a comptroller's audit, they are available on the website, which is available at the link, but I'll also send those out with the reviews as well, just so everyone's aware.
What was the thinking of removing the feedback requirement? Was it that it wasn't useful, or that organizations were?
Really timing, I would say. So we do have letters to respond to the applications that were submitted last year. They just haven't gone out in a timely manner for this application cycle. Last year, applicants were given the opportunity to conference with Mary Ellie, who previously administered this program, and really only a few organizations took her up on it. So I would like to come up with some more efficient feedback structure for the organization so that they, know how they can make a better application the years following, which hasn't happened for this cycle yet.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to deal with if they hadn't gotten
Right.
specific feedback, so.
Right.
And it had been a couple of years, right?
Yeah, a couple organizations had called us last year a little bit confused because letters hadn't gone out last year either. So just kind of removing that confusion, we just removed it entirely from that section.
And we talked about it last time, but the comptroller audits happen a few years or several years, so they're not free by any means everybody, but felt it important to address the ones that they have.
Well, the ones that they've done, there's obviously an article in the paper yesterday about the Albright and then about exploring more and whatnot. What happens? I mean, the audit was done, they're claiming exploring more, it hasn't done anything about addressing it. Do we just keep funding them? I mean,
How they answer the questions on the, what they put in their application and then how it's evaluated. And I think it's in the scoring.
Yeah, so it
section.
can be reflected in your scoring as a reviewer, if they haven't adequately addressed the issues that are in the audit. If there's anything else that comes from the county, I'll make everyone aware prior to when reviews go out.
okay.
So and then I think addressing it in there is a good idea specifically, so to your point.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So then we have a couple proposed changes that came from actually Mary Ellie, who is on the call. So if there are any additional, we can discuss them. But one of them was previously we've talked about in concerns with an endowment. If an organization has an endowment, not that they should be penalized for that, but just that they may have a leg up from other organizations. So should we score them a little bit differently than organizations that do not?
And what do we do now? I'm sorry. If they have
Right
an-
now, they disclose that they have an endowment, but it doesn't affect their score in any way.
They shouldn't be penalized for having an endowment. I mean, to me, if you score them differently, they're being penalized for
Yeah.
being fiscally potentially prudent by planning for the future.
And some of the things we look at are, do they have diverse funding sources? Are they not overly reliant on public funding? So I would say that's positive. It's to your point, fiscally responsible for them to do that. I think we only asked that for the the highest tier ones, right? We don't ask that across the board. So kind of matching the size of organization with that kind of elevated expectation.
Do we ask the
I think we
size?
added it to the lower levels last year.
Was added to the lower levels last year.
Okay.
So do we ask the
I think we did.
size at the same time? Because I've
Yeah.
seen endow, you can get somebody to endow, but it's not necessarily a
Yeah.
significant amount of money. It depends.
And it depends, some of it can be restricted to things that aren't general operating, so while it may look good on paper,
Yeah.
it doesn't really affect their, or have a positive effect on their day-to-day.
I'll just see what the wording is. Yeah, so you have an endowment, what's the total endowment, what are the earnings from the endowment, endowment expenses, and then provide a statement of spending rules. And then also, do you currently have a quiet or public capital and or endowment campaign underway? And then there's further questions about that campaign goal. The answer is yes. And then are you planning for a capital or endowment campaign for the future?
That's,
Yeah, Colette, do you have
Yeah,
the
seems
level
great.
1 or 2 in front of you as well?
I do not, I just have the level 3.
Okay.
Marietta, was there anything else with the endowment concerns?
Just that we were trying to make it more fair, and an organization that has a healthy endowment is more likely to be able to, well, to have diverse funding sources and also to score higher, so then they just keep getting more from the county, whereas some organizations that maybe don't have it would need to leg up more. So it's not so much penalizing them as trying to be fair across the board.
Well, collecting the information, I think, is good to know whether or not they've got an endowment, but whether or not that should negatively or positively affect them in their application for general operating funds. I mean, it's just kind of historical information to be good to have, but I don't think it should impact positively or negatively their application. Just my 2 cents.
I agree.
I agree too.
So I have 2 questions actually. One has to do with board additional information that you have there. What has demographic characteristics have to do with the endowment concerns? I don't quite understand that.
So they're not related, it's just 2 separate proposed changes.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So my next one then has to do with the endowment itself. I mean, if an organization has an endowment, unless that endowment has some sort of limitations as to where they can use the money, I don't know why it should impact the level of funding that they receive. And is there a way we would know if the endowment is that specific? Because I don't remember.
We could ask it, I mean, well, how much is restricted, unrestricted,
It would be on the balance sheet, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
it should be,
Permanently
yeah.
restricted.
Yeah.
I mean, we would see the flows on the income statement and the balances, but being able to tie it directly to source from the endowment versus source from maybe short-term, one-off, maybe we can. It depends, I think, yeah.
Was one of the things was the spend policy, right? That was included, so
Okay.
that's gonna indicate whether it can be, what it can be used for, and like the earnings and that kind of thing. Is that enough?
Would there be a problem with just asking, are there limitations or specific things that the endowment may be used for or cannot be used for? Wouldn't that simply tell us?
Is the spending rules wouldn't,
Yeah, I think that the spending rules would get to that.
Yeah.
The purpose. Are you getting at that using it for operations versus?
Use it for anything. Maybe they can't use it for certain performances, for example, or performances in certain areas.
Spending rules sometimes can be unclear, because it could be, well, what's your, 5% of your rolling 3-year average or something like that could be their spending rule. But the specific purpose is kind of, I think, what you're getting at. Whether or not it can be used for general ops, or if it's acquisition, or.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There might be multiple endowments, I mean.
Yeah. Is that a new question that you put in, or is that something we've had? I don't remember.
So this question supposedly is throughout all of the levels as of last year.
Okay.
And if we want to get more specific about the information, we would just have to tweak some of the questions. Which if you do have this packet, it's on level 5, or on page 5 and 6.
So this is, the lorem ipsum is what is currently what the organizations are currently filling out.
Correct.
So we will get a lot of responses to spending rules.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be able to see.
If there is an endowment.
If
So
there is an
isn't,
endowment, right.
If it's no, then that's all the questions go in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get,
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think the lower levels had the question about the spending.
Okay.
I'm trying to get on my computer. Sorry. We'll try to get that info as soon as I can.
and forgive me, but I take it the different levels of the different sizes of the organizations. That there's different, okay.
Sizes or, but really funding requests,
Okay.
amounts, yeah.
Alright.
To your point, that maybe add that to the lower levels, because in some cases that might be even more important since the dollars, are larger or smaller. The overall dollars are smaller, so that might make a bigger impact, I guess. So, yeah. I don't remember what triggered that question, so if there's any more context from anyone.
And I take it the criteria that we're talking about here to determine the score, we'll get that, right? And we'll get some kind of, okay, oh, so, right, very good.
So other than adding maybe to the question about the, is there a better way to put it than spending rules or purpose restrictions for spending?
Limitations.
Right, you could do simply, are there any restrictions on the endowment, if there is one? But we could wait to see what our responses are before, because they're currently filling this out, right, or no?
Not yet,
Not yet, oh, not yet.
not yet.
Well, a spending rule is different from a purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
A spending rule is like what percent over what period, whereas a purpose is, this is for scholarships for students.
Correct.
Which means it's not for other operating purposes. So maybe, do we want to ask about the spending rule or the purpose?
Or both.
Or both.
Both. Spending rule and then your purpose. Or what the, purpose by the spend versus restricted and unrestricted.
Yeah, keeping the language as
Generic.
basic and clear as possible, because of the wide range of folks we have filling this out. Okay, so
Great. Yeah, so those,
that should be easy.
they can be tweaked, and then I'll add in purpose for the endowment, making sure that all these questions are included in the lower levels as well.
Yeah, and no is an easy answer if they don't have to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It shouldn't cause confusion on that side.
Yeah.
Unless, I guess we'll get to that, we'll deal with that if we get to it, a true endowment versus what some folks.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a foundation. What's a real foundation versus what some titles say. Okay, and then the second one.
Yeah, so the second proposed change is kind of elaborating on the additional information about the board demographics question. So right now we just really say, is there any additional, information about the board that you would like to disclose regarding diversity or demographics? So kind of guiding the applicants a little bit more. A lot of those responses, didn't provide a ton of additional information, so making it along the lines of, given the demographic characteristics listed above, are there additional examples of diversity reflected by your board? Are there areas in which you want to increase diversity and representation? So that gives them the opportunity to disclose, additional ways, but then also, is there, something you are hoping to achieve with your board diversity and representation?
Where is this?
This question,
Page 11.
well,
Page 12.
Is it in that board additional information where you want to, where it might help to give something more specific about
exactly.
what additional information they might put in?
Yeah, so from a lot of the reviews we received last year, so it's a way that the applicants can disclose things that we're not asking, experience levels, diversity in many ways, but then also a lot of the answers we received were about age diversity, which is great to include, but just kind of asking for a little bit more information than just, the applicant not disclosing any additional, or giving them some more opportunities to elaborate on that.
The only suggestion I would have is if we can work competencies into the statement as well too,
Sure.
since we have the, we asked them to outline those.
So given the demographic characteristics and competencies listed above.
Yeah, just to make sure that that's kind of a talking point for them as well
Yeah.
too.
That's great. So we're good with that change? Okay, great. Awesome. So I guess this is also an opportunity if there are any proposed changes from the board after reviewing the application.
When is the deadline for these applications to be submitted?
So it will be released on February 18th.
The
And then-
survey or the form, okay?
Correct, the application, and then level 1 applications, which are the least labor intensive, and 2, the form are due April 15th.
Okay.
And then levels 2 and 3 are due April 22nd.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the application or concerns?
Didn't we talk at one point about whether or not they attended the,
We did, at the last meeting, we did talk about that. So that is, there is a question to disclose if they've attended or not. They're not penalized for not attending. They don't receive points if they did, but it's really just a good resource for all the applicants.
Well, you mentioned that there were 2 dates for the briefings, which is an opportunity for the organizations to come and ask questions. And I guess Matt presented last year as chair. He did the first part, and then Colette or Mary Ellie take over and go through the process a little bit more. The second location, there were 2 of them, February 25th and 26th, but the second one, the location fell through. So at this point, we're looking at one, unless someone has a readily available place that we could utilize that has AV and room for about 50
I would say so.
somewhere. Not that we necessarily got that many, but as a target. So.
Yeah, and as a reminder, so these applicant briefings are recorded and they're put on our website, so applicants can access them, as needed throughout the application process. So really the thought was, we have one, and those who want to attend in person can, If they cannot, they can always view the briefing online.
Where is the one that will be held?
This will be at the Central Library.
And you usually get about 50 people?
I think
So
that's.
in the past, when I've been part of this process for about a year now, we've received about 50 people at the other briefings. That may double with, only having one briefing, so we'll see about that, but in the space that we have capacity for. Do you know what the capacity is?
I think it is about 150.
Great.
When is that taking place?
So that will be February 25th.
And that's online?
Yeah, and that's on our agenda too.
Oh, great. I see.
And anyone else that would like to attend is welcome. I don't think that's happened too often, but certainly, anyone of you that wants to attend can do that.
So in person or virtual for that meeting?
Is that virtual too?
I believe so. So we'll be able to set it up so that it's there's a meeting link, and then it will be recorded as well. That way, if people attend virtually, they can also ask questions through the chat.
And it looks like the capacity is for 300, so more than enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right,
I went out of order there.
No, that's okay. All right, the other pieces of the application process that we should review today are the review scoring changes and edits. So an additional piece of the review for the financial section of the review sheet will be the comptroller monitoring report if applicable. So that'll be an additional part of your review sheet. And then for new applicants, I know Muriel can touch on this too a little bit more if needed, but previously we've capped new applicants if they've received a 90% to 100% score, they receive $3,000 regardless of what their funding request was through the application. And then beyond that, 60 to 80, 89 was 2,000, 50 to 65% score was 1,000. If they received less than a 50% score, they did not receive funding that year. So instead of kind of capping these new applicants and then inhibiting them from growing beyond that for application cycles to come, we were thinking of reviewing the applicants just as other applicants are reviewed. The score of their application that's received, is multiplied by their scores, multiplied by their funding request, and then the additional review kind of ways that we have to manipulate the numbers to fit our grand total. They would just be reviewed as other applicants are reviewed. So if that's agreed upon today, then we can move forward with that.
Yeah, I know.
It makes sense.
We've run into issues before where a large organization was really constrained on their funding because of the caps.
And even if you think about that, a new organization with the types of increases we're able to give, it would be 20 years before they could get anything, even up to like, I don't know, $10,000 or something like that. So it wasn't making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I don't know
What was the idea of having the caps?
That's before me. I'm one of the ones who messed it up by not realizing it. So.
My understanding would be, as a new applicant, it would just kind of keeping them at a certain amount and then rewarding prior applicants who keep coming back. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that was before me as well, but
And some of them could not possibly have gotten to where they are if they started with 3,000 in it.
And if they've got a quality application and they're a quality
Yeah.
organization, right?
Yeah.
To be judged accordingly.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
If I may, I think this is at this point an almost like 50-year program. So a lot of inequities have it's been carried on basically. But part of the issue was that this program is kind of different from I think almost every other program the organizations apply for. So sometimes they would a frame for what we could fit all new applicants kind of got a little bit at a time with the intention that eventually they would grow beyond that. I'm not sure it actually happened, but that was part of it.
I think kind of in this vein, one of the things we touched on last year was funding request amounts being aligned with the request amount and not prior funding amount. So part of the broader cultural plan initiatives. Any kind of updates on that front as far as anything coming from the broader cultural plan and just kind of anything on that topic that we need to contemplate?
Do you have any input on that, Mary Lee?
Well, we couldn't make the math work last year with going by request amount. Unfortunately, it was still based on their prior grant, but then multiplied by their score, their scaled score. I think we could try it again and see if we can make the math work, but I'm just not sure it would.
Yeah, for context, so when all of the applications were received, we have roughly an $8.4 million pot of money that we can reward out, and the funding request that came in totaled over $10 million. So it has to be scaled in some way so that fits what we're actually able to give out.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, like I said, sometimes the organizations don't necessarily provide a reasonable ask. There was one that was getting 40,000 and 1 year requested 400,000. Got in like, what was it, like 5,000 and requested like 100,000. And they're not that big of an organization, so I'm not sure. It's, like I said, that organization is not that big. They would probably end up having to return some of that money because their expenses don't even work that way. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually leads a little bit into Mary Ellie and I were trying to come up with, a reasonable request increase for applicants. I know when I came on last year, there were lots of applicants who were asking for the absolute maximum of the level that they could, regardless of what they had asked for in previous years. So the math really didn't work out to where there was a reasonable number, magic number. But in the past, we have used this structure to kind of review how applicants, the increase in funding that they're requesting. If an applicant is requesting less than $25,000 and they've received a 90 to 100% score, a 10% increase is reasonable. Versus, if the same or a larger organization is requesting over 250, they would only get a 0.5% increase. Just mathematically reasonable. So this really comes into play when Mary Ellie and I are, taking a look at all the requests that come in, multiplying everything by their score and things like that. But just so you're aware that this might come into play during, the actual recommendation process.
If you go back to the previous one for a minute, I think this is where we're kind of being asked that we need to perhaps have some consensus on number 2. And, although, does that get shared with the applicants? Because if it did, I don't think.
That's a good question. In the applicant briefing, it would be touched upon. Mary Ellie, do you know in the past, were new applicants aware that they're capped at those amounts?
I think it's mentioned. I don't remember if it was formal anywhere because it also depends who else is in the pot and what they're also requesting. So some years we have big organizations that stop applying, so there's extra money. so to speak.
Yeah.
And there's been years where new big applicants have come in, so there's not as much money. So the first time applicant amount has changed over the years depending how much is in the pot or how much we can distribute. I think part of it is, if I understand correctly, other grant programs, you can't accommodate their request, they get nothing. In ours, we're trying to give everyone something as long as they're eligible and not a concern for receiving tax funds or taxpayer funds, sorry.
So, thoughts, I would like to see the cap at least removed, but,
I'd remove the cap and I wouldn't be telling people that there is one. And let them
okay.
on the merit of the application and then determine internally.
Yeah, and it's relayed to the applicants that, just because you request a certain amount, doesn't mean that it's guaranteed, so.
Yeah, and there's a few other,
And if somebody got some, I look at botanical gardens, they got almost a $50,000 increase last year. Because they got $240,000, does that mean that they're gonna get $240 next year? Because that's how we look at what they got. I think it should be a consideration, but it shouldn't be a guarantee. Because you're siphoning off money that other, or maybe smaller organizations that would wanna try, wouldn't be available to them.
One quick point, absolutely correct, and also if it's a legislative add-on, we don't include that. So that's usually where the big jumps come from.
Yeah.
I understand how it gets tossed in there, but I'm just saying it should, year to year, it shouldn't just be a guarantee because they got it one year that they automatically continue to get the higher amount.
I think that's really important, and unfortunately, we don't have the final say in many of those. Every time I see some of those amounts increase, and I did look at actually I had botanical gardens last year, so I was a little surprised. However, I think what's really important is that, also as important, is that the larger institutions don't always assume that they're going to get these massive amounts, because it does take away from any new applicants or smaller, really well-run organizations that are simply small and don't have all of those assets, namely audiences. So I wish there was a way that was clearer, because I think the larger organizations assume that they're going to get a lot of money, because they do.
I agree completely with the points you guys are making, but I'm not disagreeing, but I'm concerned with some organizations that when they're figuring out their budgets, and I'm just wondering what this board's position is. When an organization's figuring out their budget, they budget for what they got last year, I would think, and you can see where I can see the impetus for giving them what they got last year, of organizations depending on that. I don't think it's right, but you can see where it would be really hard for them to figure out a budget if they don't know what their funding is going to be year to year. And how do is that our concern, or is that their problem?
I don't know that we can be concerned with that, only because they are looking at, or I'm assuming my experience is, that they are looking at trying to either retain something that they've lost. Federal government is a really good example right now. So where else can I get that money? And it may be that increase, they think, can come from the county. So you put that in your dream budget, which usually has nothing to do with your real budget.
Your budget is just a plan. There are times where, when I was with the Birchfield, you'd plan for XYZ grants to come in, and when they don't come in, you have to adjust, you have to drop back and punt. And the same thing would be for your county funding. You could maybe assume that you're gonna get same level as last year, but you shouldn't bank on it. You can't bank, because all these are a wish and a prayer for any grant that you're applying for.
Okay.
Yes, people do bank on it,
Yeah,
they do when they're planning, but it's just a plan. The same way you say, well, I'm gonna approach all of these foundations for this amount of money for these programs. It's a wish and a prayer. You work to get it to come to fruition, but it may not.
I
And
guess-
our obligation isn't their budget, our obligation is the taxpayer.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. In my opinion, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Just so since you've never gone through this before, we make our recommendations and then the legislature, the county executive makes changes and we don't have, nothing comes back, so it's, just so. And also there is, and it doesn't totally address your question, but there's the 20% piece in the 20% of expenses, right? So that, as far as that, what they can ask for overall, and I know if it's a smaller budget, it's a smaller dollar amount, but
Right.
that parameter is in there, and I think we stick to that pretty closely.
Okay.
So.
And I'm not sure I'll be able to articulate this fully, but I guess some of my thoughts on part of the issue we have at the end of this is, $10 million for request, $8 million budget, right? So I think there's probably maybe two paths or a combination of them of, one path is you have winners and losers, and we're gonna draw a hard line. If you're below this line, you're not getting funding, and that's how we shore up the $2 million difference. Or the other path is, okay, it's funding, 80% at what we would like to give everyone, just given that's how big the pie is, right? And I think that if we have an idea of, what that kind of target state is going to be to resolve that difference, that might prompt some things in our evaluation form where we can start to highlight and say, okay, yes, they're asking for, $20,000, but really they probably only need 10, right? And we can start to signal some of that through our evaluation as we're in the details, but that's going to be fairly complex that I don't think we'll solve here and now. But just one thing I would throw out there is if we do want to move in that direction of aligning funding to the request amount, there's probably something on the front end we'll want to do for the applications to start earmarking where we might be able to shave some things, or if we take the path of you're below a hurdle rate, then there's no funding, so that we can just fund the strong applicants. But that has a whole different tonality to it, which is a shift. So
Yeah, I think that would be great to know while we're doing reviews this year, say, is there anything that we could change for, the following year for 2028? If there's a pattern that we're seeing, just making sure that's communicated. I think that would be great.
That's a really important policy decision, though. Are you going through and cutting stuff out if you can, or? Okay. Do we get guidance on that, or we do kind of decide as a board, or is it up to each individual's take on the application?
I mean, I might look for guidance from the county executive on that, because ultimately that's where the budgets are coming from. There's probably
right.
Direction there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation, of course, with a lot of the reviews and the audits that are going on with the comptroller's office. County executive feels strongly that you all are doing great work, and these evaluations are happening in a way where there's transparency, and there's a lot of there's a lot of hard work, and it's unfortunate because there's this legislative process at the very end of this where these executive recommendations are put in the budget, and then you kind of think afterwards, well, what happened there? So it's there's conversations going on currently. I think hopefully we'll have a little bit more understanding from the legislature, and then there'll be a little bit more information to provide as we get closer to the application deadline. But it's a tricky time right now. I think a lot of folks are, they don't want to see their names in the press like some organizations have. But hopefully it sends a signal as well to some of the organizations that they've got to keep their books tight and be transparent with the information that they're providing.
Are there any comments on the proposed changes to review or anything like that. And as a reminder, there will be, at our next scheduled meeting, will really be when we dive into the reviews, what that process looks like.
Maybe.
That's true.
Maybe need another one.
But I was just gonna mention, just kind of to piggyback on, those conversations. This is the estimated total that we will be working with. So, as reviews come in, unless we hear otherwise, the 8,887,828 number will be what we're trying to fit, all of the funding into. And that's it for the presentation piece, so we can keep going on with some of the agenda items.
Real quick, sorry. I got
But
a little data finally. So last year we did ask all organizations if they had an endowment. Of the 81 level 1 organizations, 14 said yes. Of the 27 level 2 organizations, 13 said yes. And of the 9 level 3 organizations, 8 said yes. We did not ask any additional information from level 1, just whether they had it or not.
okay, so those questions will be added in after this meeting then.
So what I heard what she's, the levels, but what was the original? What did they respond to?
Oh, the endowment questions. Yeah.
Can I ask one question, and please don't hate me for asking it? We're talking about funding, somebody applies, they've gotten, say, $50,000 all the time. We go through this whole scoring process and the quality of their application. And if the assumption is there that they're going to be funded at the same level, is there a point to reviewing it all? No, seriously,
No,
and
that's a
I'm
great
not,
question.
I'm not trying to be a jerk here. Maybe the assumption should be taken out that they get, and they need to be looked at holistically as a new application each year. Because we go through this whole tedious process, which is great, and they should be looked at like that. But what kind of a real impact does it have if we're assuming you're staying at the level, it's whether or not you get more?
But they are getting scored every year in every application. So
But I guess my question is, how does that score impact whether or not they get funded if the assumption we've been talking about is that they get what they've gotten in past?
wouldn't the lower
No,
score
it's an
affect the
increase
anyway?
off of what they got before.
I'm sorry, one more time?
So it impacts how much more they can get. Or, if some of them we have alerted the administration leadership that there is some concerns with them that later comes out. So it's still a good use of the board's time.
I totally agree, I'm just saying if.
Yep.
Okay,
And
good.
they don't, there's no assumption they'll get the same amount, I guess. Usually the better they
Has
score.
there ever
the
been an
more
instance
amount they
where
get.
an organization has received fewer dollars year after year?
Year after year, but yeah, I'm sure Marielli has some
There are,
spreadsheets somewhere.
yeah, we have the recommendations that come out at the end of this process. There are several organizations that receive a decrease.
Yeah.
Or at least a recommended decrease. Most receive, the same as prior years. And then there are a select few that get an increase, likely because of their score. Yeah.
I think year after year, the budget has had that inflation adjustment as well
Sure,
too, which has
yeah.
kind of had some wind in the sails.
Yeah, I guess percentage
Yeah.
would be the more appropriate.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, which we do have those percentages. I can get those out to you if you want.
But there have been organizations that have gone down.
There are, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just,
Yeah,
good.
okay. Anything else?
No, if we want, we discussed the applicant briefing. So again, if you would like to attend, I can send out a calendar invite just so you know it's happening. You're welcome to attend. If not, that's fine. And then after this meeting, we will have, we'll release a press release regarding the application, that when, so applicants know when it's being released, what the due dates are, and about the applicant briefing. If you want to share with your, networks and things like that, I can share that out with the board, and then also have a social media post that if you want to share with your organization, that would be great. So I'll send those out after this meeting, and then really this would be the opportunity for public comment, which we do not have anyone from the public. And we usually talk about next meeting.
Yeah, I just had a couple of small things. One of the things that we talked a little bit about before was visiting a recipient, a grant recipient. I remember going to the Roycroft we had, and I did actually look back and see the other purpose, but we did some bylaw revisions at that point, and so we had a board meeting, but then we toured the Roycroft and I know bandwidth-wise that from staff that got to be a little complicated, but if I would like to see if we can maybe do that again. Happy to help orchestrate it if that would be helpful to you guys. But what are your thoughts on that, and if there are any suggestions on I don't know, I don't remember how Roycroft got to it, but I don't think there was any particular reason to that. It was somebody was willing to host, and it was just an interest. They had something to show, to walk through, and we walked through all their it was printing and all that kind of stuff. So if you have some suggestions on that, happy to entertain them. Time wise, I'm open on that one. If you think that we feel we need to get together to have a quorum, we could have some discussions like that. I think there's possibly some bylaw revisions or at least clarifications and things that we might want to look at if we want to fold that meeting in. That's just one thought I wanted to put out there, and I can follow up with everybody to get when you have a chance to think about that. Be asking for, I think we're going to try to continue to use at least the opportunity to have teams. I know different groups did things differently, but once the applications are ready for review, we've done them in teams before. In the set, not that most of you have been through it for your benefit. There was a team lead, and that team lead could convene a meeting if everyone wanted to and just discuss some of the issues that you were having. It was a good time to bounce some questions off of each other, and last year we had a lot of new board members, so I think it was maybe a bit more helpful last year. But it's just a smaller group to be able to share thoughts, concerns, questions. So we'll probably do that again. If anybody's interested in being a team lead, let me know, and we can just so that I can get a jump start on putting those together, and then before that begins, the applications assignments will be done. So
I'll be happy to put a team for you.
okay, thanks. And I guess I know when I started on the board, we used to meet at 4:00. Now we meet at 9:00. I don't know if anyone has any preferences. Maybe I'll just send that out. That we can send out a question on that so that we can wind up with more people.
Yeah, something I could do, just kind of in addition to having an additional meeting where we do a tour, I can send out a survey for dates, and on there I can also mention, is 9:00 on a Friday morning still a good time for everybody, or are there additional, times that would work? So I can do that after this meeting.
Yeah. So you should start. It would be supportive of going out to visit, at least one, and I don't have any particular thoughts.
I just thought about something as you were saying this, perhaps one of the things we could have is one of these meetings at one of the sites.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be just, showing up to spy on you, but rather actually
Yeah.
seeing who you are and where you are.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, and when the Roycroft one, I just happened to be able to find what we did there. We did have a brief meeting, I think that's when you became chair, and where we did the election, and then we also did a bylaw approval, so that might be a good chance to clean up some of these things that we haven't been able to really technically move forward with, not having quorum.
Well, the challenge I still have with meeting down here is the parking. It's, as my children say, it sucks. The first word that came to my mouth.
Yeah.
Seems very appropriate.
Yeah, and I think we went to, what's the right initials now, public radio. Yeah, so I think that was, that was just a meeting, that was anything else. So open to suggestions and.
Well, given the number of entities that apply for funding.
Yeah.
Would it make any sense to, like, maybe take 2% of them or whatever and say, and whatever random 2% and divide up into a group and just, I don't know, this sounds stupid to say as a sign of respect, but that we understand and appreciate your organization and, just public funds, taking a tour, it's not a judgment tour, but it's a validation tour, if that makes any sense.
It's a judgment tour.
It is, but, but it's not like we're gonna affect, it's not like the tour itself is gonna affect whether or not we score their application if it comes in decently, but it's just to put a community face on the people that are reviewing your applications. I know that's asking a lot because people's lives are ridiculously busy, but if you went to see one or two in a year?
Yeah.
Yay, nay, okay.
I like the idea, I think just logistically, we'll
Right.
so do you wanna flesh that out a little? How you would suggest,
Sure.
and then we can approach it from there?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
Because I know it's, like you said, I love doing those things, but trying to fit them in and get everything to work and, the right point of contact. Okay.
Sure.
And I think small and large, like
Yeah.
some kind of a mix at least.
Is that part of our evaluation process, is to do a site visit as well, in terms of looking at the numbers, or no?
No.
Okay,
No, it hasn't been. It's, I think it's been on the list of nice things to do,
Yeah.
but it's not verboten?
it's not,
Okay.
no.
Alright.
No,
And hopefully some of these, excuse me, I didn't raise my hand.
that's,
But some of, these are arts organizations. I would hope that we would have visited them on our own anyhow, right?
yeah, but there are 100 and whatever.
Yes, there are. We're very fortunate in that.
Yes,
We're
I
very
agree.
fortunate.
Yes, so, alright. Okay, so I guess we'll continue to look into that, and I would, I guess I consider that a little bit of a social meeting. I think would be nice if we had the opportunity just to get to know each other a little bit, and that would be another, maybe put those things together, because it's hard to add an extra hour to something, like a regular meeting, so. Right, and we did, last thing, we did have a resignation, so, we'll look back to the applications we have. I know I have not yet read your, Matt had done the interviews last year, so we'll, between now and hopefully the next meeting, definitely by May, but in between, look at adding, and getting it back up to 15. So it was, William Pierce is the person who stepped down, so, okay. All right, anything else? Appreciate folks who came in person, so we'll try to get the rest and get a few of these things just cleaned up.
Good deal.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.